Okay, let's talk about my first D&D game I ever played. When I was a teenager, I had a bunch of friends who wanted to play 4th edition D&D. Now, the first warning sign should have been that nobody had ever played ever before. No one, not even the dungeon master. So I, a motivated player, decided to help everyone roll up their character sheets by using an online character generator. We got through it, like 6 of us, and we finally got our character sheets put together after maybe 2 weeks. We got together the night of, and and this is where things started going wrong. So the DM disappeared. We were all hanging out waiting for him, wondering what happened, because he was there earlier. Like, it's not like he didn't show up. He was there, and then he was gone. You see, what had happened was, we found out later, my older sister and her friends were going to a party, and he saw an opportunity to flirt with one of the girls he had a crush on. So he took the opportunity and went. We, not knowing what to do, just started hanging out and playing Magic the Gathering, like you do. And about 2 or 3 hours later, I'd say 3 hours, about 3 hours later, the door opens and in walks our DM along with a gaggle of my sister's friends. Okay, this is gonna sound ridiculous, but I promise it's true. They walked in the door and one of my sister's friends looked over at us and said, "What are you doing?" And on the TV behind us was playing a then recent episode of the TV show Family Guy. Specifically the episode where a man dies and goes to heaven to meet his 72 virgins. In that episode, he walks past the pearly gates, looks at a bunch of nerds sitting around a table, and one of them volunteers, "We're playing Magic the Gathering." And all of us burst out laughing, confusing these very pretty women even more, and then they just kind of left. Now our dungeon master, slightly inebriated, but now present, was like, "Well, let's start." So at around 11:30 p.m. to midnight, we started our very first game of Dungeons and Dragons. We started off on an airship, and it was really awkward and slow-paced, obviously, because a bunch of us were just trying role-playing for the first time, and I think maybe 2 of us were theater kids at all, so there was really not a lot of experience to go around. One of the party members tried to steal a feather duster from... No, a sock. Yes, right. One of our party members tried to steal socks. That's what it was. One of our party members tried to steal socks from our cabin on this airship that was flying into this druidic root village. He failed to steal the socks because that's how D&D works apparently, and was promptly pummeled with a feather duster by the maid. We got to the village and we transitioned to the local tavern, like you do, whereupon everyone immediately began screwing around. I could see the dungeon master was struggling to make the plot go forward, so I, playing the bard, was like, "Well, I'm gonna go ask and see if there's any rumors around town." I talked to the bartender. The bartender said, "Hey, I'm only gonna tell you things that are going on around here if you buy a drink." So I'm like, "Okay, give me a beer, I guess." To which the bartender responds, "Okay, 1 root beer coming up," because it's a root village, you see. Several party members took notice of the pun and volunteered to burn down the village. We spent the next 30 minutes litigating whether or not that was the thing we were going to do before finally they were convinced that we should maybe play the game. We still haven't done really anything yet. We get pointed to a local dungeon because something was happening that was causing conflict between the local druids of the root village and a nearby artificing community. This was like a proto Magic the Gathering setting, I guess. We end up in the dungeon and we get into the first encounter of the entire game, whereupon the universe began to collapse on itself because the dungeon master nor the players were particularly familiar with the rules of combat. And with how everything was set up, the dungeon master found they couldn't really damage the frontline players. They couldn't get past their AC, while the backline players could hit the enemies but couldn't do very much damage at all. This combat took what felt like hours, and probably did ultimately. We beat some, I think it was kobolds. And after the first encounter, everyone was too tired and we called the game. We never played again, and I wasn't sure if D&D was going to be for me. I ended up playing again later, but that is a story for a different time, where things got worse. They got more grounded in gameplay, but they got much worse. Hey, did you like the story? Maybe drop a follow. Come back. There's going to be more. I promise. It's going to happen. You should do that. If you want to catch me live, I also play over on a channel called Nat19Official on Twitch, where we play generally every other Thursday and every single Saturday, barring the first Saturday of the month. Bye-bye!